Hi all, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to do something a bit more advanced than we've been doing. So this is a project basically that I haven't created here, but this is an LLM course, Build a Semantic Book Recommender. So basically uses Python, OpenAI, LangChain, and Gradio. The video itself is up here on YouTube, and the training course is up here on YouTube. And the video itself is kind of over 2 hours, 15 minutes long, but it's well worth spending the 2 hours and 15 minutes because you'll learn an awful lot about, um, semantic searches in AI and semantic searches, use a vector DB to find information like an old style database, but using numeric values. So it's a really good practice and really good kind of well spent of time to just kind of go through this course. But as related to this course, they actually have up on YouTube, up on GitHub here, the actual code base here. So the basics of the code base. Now, if you kind of run through this, you'll actually sort of find information about it. So, give these guys probably a like and subscribe to the channel. It's really well done. It's from Free Code Camp. So I'll kind of put links into this video, but you can sort of see, so they have the YouTube video here, they have the GitHub repository here that you can basically pull down all of the actual information here. So it's really well worth doing. But from my point of view here, what I'm going to basically do is I'm going to actually set this course up again. So I completed this probably in July. So I'm going to kind of do this course again. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go into my PyCharm here, and I'm going to recreate a new project here. So, I've just literally just created in my downloads folder the actual project, 6_book recommender. And this is part of our, continued training here. So you can sort of see the actual project here is going to be, this one here. So, really it doesn't make a difference on what you kind of call the project itself here. But this is like, using RAG approach and data science. So you can sort of see here, I've kind of listed out the actual kind of components here. So you've got like, they use kind of Google Colab, which, allows you to kind of build and load data sets, much better maybe than kind of my own Mac would basically do. And then they've got the kind of Python charts, they've got a Jupyter notebook, they've got Chroma, Vector DB, they've got a no llama model, which is, connecting over to that Vector DB. They use a method called text classification here, with a Hugging Face model, to classify text. They've also got like a sentiment analysis. They've got Python transformers, and they represent all of this in a Gradio dashboard. So again, this is not my project here, but I'm going to actually kind of follow this project, and I'm going to actually kind of start setting it up in my own environment here, and sort of see if I can kind of get it to run here. So the first thing, I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pick a Python interpreter here. So you know there's many ways that you can kind of do this. So if I kind of sort of say add local interpreter here, generate a new here, I'd probably use the latest Python here, which is like 13.5. In my project here, it'll create the environment file here. So I'm going to just kind of, start the installation for that. So again, this is a fresh project. I've touched nothing in this. You can sort of see that, there's red lines underneath. Um, there is red lines underneath my packages right now because I don't have anything um, installed. So this is going to kind of set it up on my Mac, and you could try this on Colab as well. So I'm just going to actually kind of set it up on my Mac. If the Mac is getting kind of complicated, um, I'll actually kind of switch it over to Colab, and um, I'll set up the exact same project there. But right now, I just kind of try and set this up kind of locally on my Mac. And again, it's all kind of learning, right? So you sort of see that it's actually set up now, a dot VNV file. So, for your virtual environment. So this is, my PyCharm here. We're basically going to follow this kind of tutorial, go through every single step of it. Um, and kind of just give this PyCharm a kind of a few minutes because it's actually kind of updating and everything. So the first thing that they kind of mention is setting up, all of the actual dependencies. So I've kind of listed out the kind of steps here. You can sort of see I've kind of listed out, what we kind of need to kind of set this up. I'm going to add a, version that I'm going to basically use. And I'm going to sort of say if we can kind of get this basics running up, that, the first thing that the lady does is actually kind of brings down like a data set um, from Kaggle Hub. Um, and if you've never sort of seen that, it's actually here. So this is Kaggle, and you can kind of register and download all these kind of different data sets for using. You know, the lady actually uses like the 7K books data set. So we're going to kind of stick with that, and then we'll be able to follow through with the tutorial and make sure that we're doing exactly the same. So, but the first thing I need to do is make sure that my PyCharm environment is set up and running, working. Give it a kind of few minutes. For example, it looks like it's kind of finished the kind of initial setup, and now I actually have an interpreter here. And the first thing it's actually looking for is Kaggle Hub. So I'm going to kind of pick a version to actually install, and you can sort of see it now starts to install now. Again, the kind of argument here is you can kind of do this, with your requirements file and all that kind of sort of stuff. And of course you can. And now it's kind of looking for pandas, and I can kind of, do it from, I can install it from here, or I can kind of search for it in here. So I can just kind of do pandas, and I can kind of find it here, and I can sort of say, well, do you want the latest with options, do you want to install the latest with options, or do you want to actually kind of pick a version here? This is this is the latest, so technically I'm installing the latest. But if I kind of do this here, select my pandas, you can sort of see that it's starting to actually kind of download. And pandas is just like a data analysis toolkit for AI that a lot of people are kind of using. So I'm going to run through all of those packages, and then I'm going to kind of rejoin on the video. Okay, so I've installed all of the packages, and basically I've listed all of those packages into my notes here. So you'll sort of see, in number 2 here, I've kind of got all the packages here. So the kind of idea is to follow through with the tutorial. I'm not going to be explaining kind of everything, but you can definitely kind of find out about, what these packages are and what they're used for. They're certainly popular in the kind of AI and analysis, data science world. So, try and sort of see, as part of your learning, that you can kind of find out what all of these kind of packages actually do. Um, I'm going to start, kind of going through now the actual PyCharm project. So my packages have all been kind of installed. And I'm going to kind of start, with this data exploration. Exploration is the file, which the lady kind of started with in the video. So I'm going to kind of start with that. And I'm going to probably just kind of mark that actually as number 1. So, just gonna make life a little bit kind of easier. So maybe we'll sort of say, text, let's say data exploration is going to become number 1. Okay. So I'll just kind of, mark it there and make sure that, I can kind of close this, and I can just kind of go back in here, and I can sort of see that, it's been renamed as number 1. So when I kind of ran through this in July, again, it's not my project, but it was there was a few kind of things that I kind of saw. So I'm not going to kind of point out, all of the kind of lines here that the lady does as part of the kind of training. But what I'm going to kind of do is making sure that, everything kind of runs for me. So these were my files. I had to kind of change a few little things, and the few little things I'll kind of get into, um, as I kind of come across them. So I'm going to continue, and that's to see if I can actually kind of get, most of this running on my Mac rather than Colab. Okay, so what happened there was in my PyCharm environment, I got this nasty error. Um, Basically, that sort of said, my Jupyter and IPY widgets, iProgress was not found. All I actually had to do was go to terminal and run this, command, and it basically resolved the issues. So if you don't know where your terminal is, you can there's your Python packages, and there's your terminal is kind of here. And just make sure you're I always use kind of bash here, so just make sure it's going to set the bash. So if you make sure it's kind of set the bash, it'll kind of work. Okay, so I want to kind of show you this, and I want to kind of make sure you're kind of aware of this. I had set up the project here in PyCharm, and I was kind of starting to pull down the data set that I needed. I was doing the imports. I was starting to kind of read the files, but what I kind of noticed is PyCharm keeps crashing. It's not my Mac. It just seems to be kind of um, just resource intensive. Um, So what I've kind of decided to actually kind of do is decided to switch over to VS Code here, because I just know that there's going to be kind of more resources. So um, I'm actually going to kind of just use a recommended um, interpreter here for Python, and I'm going to kind of set this up again. And again, it's exactly the same as I kind of did here in PyCharm, but I've kind of noticed this even kind of when we're working with PyCharm. It doesn't seem to be the most resource intensive, and you've kind of we've tried to kind of increase the this CPU usage and everything for PyCharm, but it seems to kind of crash a few times and freeze. And you'll kind of if you try this yourself, you may or may not kind of experience it, but I'm just going to kind of sort of say now I probably remember why I actually didn't use PyCharm, because I was looking through my PyCharm projects and I didn't actually sort of see there's a PyCharm project for it. So that's probably the reason back in kind of July that I probably went over back into VS Code. So long story short is I'm going to kind of set up the project kind of quickly. I actually have it, more or less kind of set up, but I'm going to reinstall the kind of packages, and then I'm going to kind of come back here. Okay, so I quickly kind of just set up the project again using Python 3.13.5, and everything just sort of seems to be kind of working much better in VS Code. So I've kind of abandoned PyCharm for this project, and I'm just going to use the exact same folder. So use the exact same folder. I personally just kind of went to VS Code. I created in a virtual environment, as normal like a VS Code, and I'm just kind of running in this kind of virtual environment here. So I'm just making sure that kind of everything's up and running. But if I kind of now start to pull down reading of the file, I can sort of see that my file is now, this is a Jupyter notebook, by the way. My file is now kind of reading everything, so I can sort of see the data is going to come down now. So I'm just going to continue on this pattern, so to see if I can kind of get everything kind of running. But as you can sort of see, I mean, it looks, I'm just going to minimize that for a second. It kind of looks like everything's kind of running here, so I can start to continue to kind of go through the tutorial, and the lady does, again, the lady does a kind of really good job to kind of explain all of this stuff. So I'm not going to explain kind of what's actually kind of happening here, um because that's actually kind of part of the tutorial. But you can sort of see we are getting a kind of heat maps now, and everything looks to be kind of working, and it's running much better in VS Code. And if I kind of sort of see the data, everything's kind of bringing back my kind of data here. So we're just going to continue with this tutorial and sort of see how we kind of get on, and if there's kind of other issues that I kind of come across. Okay, so I've gone through number one, data exploration. I've gone through everything here, and I didn't find anything else that was kind of going wrong. So at the end of this, what we basically have is our books cleaned.csv. So you can sort of see it there. So we're going to continue on with this tutorial, and we're going to start now on number two, which is going to be the text classification section. So as you can sort of see, that one reads in the books cleaned.csv. So before you actually start this one, make sure that you've run through your data exploration and everything, and you actually have a CSV called the books cleaned.csv. Okay, so one thing I want to kind of just show you here is I was going through this text classification here, which is the second file here, and everything was working here fine. I was kind of going through, and I was up to this kind of point where it started to import torch and use kind of transformers to import the pipeline. So at this kind of point, I kind of added these kind of few lines here, because I just wanted to kind of make sure that the torch backend, the NPS, is available, and the version that I was basically kind of using on my Mac. So if you don't know what kind of the torch and NPS is, you can kind of go to ChatGPT, and it sort of says, it's basically support for Apple's Metal Performance shaders, so the GPU framework used by macOS. So that's all it basically is. So I just kind of wanted to make sure that NPS is what kind of a Mac will use, and then make sure that was kind of installed and ready for use. Okay, so I just finished running through the file text classification. I didn't see anything that I really had to kind of change, and you can sort of see that um, it reads in the books cleaned, and then kind of starts to kind of categorize the books themselves into various categories. So there's nothing there that I kind of changed. I had to actually kind of modify. I just kind of ran through all of the data and steps that the course had actually provided. So everything looks to be kind of running and working. So I think we can kind of move on to our number 3, which is going to be sentiment analysis. Okay, so good news. I went through this number 3 as well for sentiment analysis, and you can, see that everything ran successfully here. A few of the commands took a few minutes to run, but obviously, I mean, there's an LLM classifying the sentiment for various phrases and descriptions. So it's obviously going to take a few minutes, but yes, everything ran for number 3. So we're going to move on to the vector search now. Okay, so I've gone through number 4 here, the vector search as well. Everything looks to be loading. There's a few kind of items I kind of found here that I actually had to update. So one, I had to make sure that, for this load.env, which is a way that Python will load environment variables in for your project. I had to create a new .env file and add my OpenAI key in there. So that was kind of one thing. And then you should sort of see this true. So if this is false, it's not loading it correctly. So you need to kind of recheck your settings on that. And then it basically kind of loads in your books cleaned, and all of that was kind of working. I had to remove this kind of separator for our new line here, because it apparently, like the 2 CSV file was just didn't need it and was causing an issue here. So I just updated that. I had to update this here, so I'll kind of just mark this here, so say updated here. So I kind of had to just kind of update this kind of section here as well, to create my text descriptions, and for my chunk sizes and the actual splitters here, so you can sort of see it kind of created on my chunks here. Loaded in my documents. I updated this line here to get my OpenAI key from the environment variable that I'd kind of created, and this is just part of the actual kind of course here. I also kind of had to update this strip here to be a lot more robust, and then as you kind of work through, everything else appeared to kind of work. So everything else was good. So we're going to continue now onto the final part, which is looking at the kind of the Gradio dashboard. Okay, so for this number 5, the Gradio dashboard, they have provided the code for this Gradio dashboard, and Gradio, you know, is a popular way to run simple applications that you want to kind of try out things. You can sort of see that they've kind of provided code here. So in the code itself, I haven't actually had to do anything really. I was just actually looking through the graduate code really, but my preference really is kind of Streamlit. I prefer Streamlit. I think kind of Streamlit is the way I kind of go with this, but definitely for learning purposes, to see their differences between Gradio and Streamlit. We'll see in Streamlit in another video slightly kind of later on, but you can sort of see I've done exactly what the lady has recommended me to do to make sure that um, the dashboard is running. So all I've really had to kind of do is just kind of run like my Gradio command with my number 5 dashboard.py. And then it kind of opens, then it kind of, starts creating all of your actual chunks. And then you can basically kind of open your dashboard. And here's your actual final product. And again, I'm not going to kind of, explain exactly what the course is actually doing. But basically, if I just kind of type in simply kind of animals, you can actually sort of see that, there's books related to animals that are basically coming up. Okay. So from that point of view, I mean, the LLM course here, we have exactly what they've kind of set up. We've had to make a few tweaks to it. It's working. It's such a good kind of course to kind of follow through with. Again, it's kind of over 2 hours and 15 minutes long, but it's well worth spending those 2 hours and getting a good kind of understanding of what RAG is and what semantic search is, and text classifications and sentiment analysis. And these are types of data science tools and processes and methods that are kind of used, in the industry today. So it's well worth doing. It was a fun one to do. And it kind of moves us down into our next project, which we'll get into in the next video. Okay, thank you.